I remember the morning like it was carved into my memory with a knife, sharp, impossible to ignore. The sunlight seeped through my blinds, painting stripes across the floor, warm and ordinary, the kind of ordinary that makes you feel safe. I thought it would be just another day. Coffee brewing, my laptop humming, the faint sound of cars outside. Routine. Comforting. But I was wrong. It started with a subtle tingling, almost like a whisper across my skin. I rubbed my arms, thinking maybe I had slept too close to the radiator. But the feeling didn't fade, it intensified, curling through my fingers, my chest, even my face. I touched my jaw and froze. Something wasn't right. My skin, it felt different. Softer. Warmer. I stumbled toward the mirror, still dismissing it as a trick of the morning light. But when I looked, really looked, my reflection made my stomach drop. My hair seemed fuller, cascading differently than yesterday, catching the sunlight in ways I had never noticed before. My jawline had softened, my cheekbones lifted subtly, almost delicately. And my eyes, looked wider, clearer, more alert, framed by lashes that I didn't remember having. A laugh bubbled up, nervous and high-pitched, and it startled me. That wasn't my voice. Or at least, not the voice I had known for 24 years. I pressed a hand to my throat. The vibration, the tone, it was melodic, unfamiliar. There was a softness, a weightless quality that made my chest tighten with confusion. What the hell is happening? I whispered to my reflection, my voice now an eerie mix of shock and wonder. I pressed both hands to my face, tracing the contours that had shifted overnight. The reflection moved in sync, yet it was someone else. Someone, impossibly familiar, yet foreign. I sat down on the edge of my bed, hands still trembling. My mind raced. Rational explanations fled. Was this a hallucination? Some kind of fever? I checked my pulse, it was normal. My breathing, steady. And yet, the reflection kept staring, unblinking, taunting me with its newness. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, time blurred. I examined every detail. My fingers were slimmer, more delicate, and my nails, how had they grown so quickly? They weren't just longer, they were perfectly shaped, manicured almost, with a subtle sheen. My body felt lighter, yet every movement was different, more fluid, more precise. Even my posture had changed naturally. I didn't realize I was standing differently, swaying lightly as I walked across the room. I caught myself speaking aloud, narrating every movement, testing the voice. Okay, think. My hands shook as I touched my face again. This couldn't be real. And yet, it was. By noon, the initial shock was a cocktail of fear, disbelief, and something dangerously close to curiosity. I found myself running through scenarios. Maybe I had fallen into a dream. Maybe some experimental drug. No, I hadn't taken anything. Maybe a prank? Impossible. Every rational explanation collapsed under the weight of what I saw in the mirror. Then came the first pangs of fear for the outside world. How would I explain this? Could I even leave my apartment? Would my friends, my family, recognize me? Would they believe me if I tried to tell them? Panic surged, tightening around my chest. I paced the apartment, muttering to myself, tripping over the furniture as I tried to imagine the day ahead. And yet, beneath it all, a flicker of curiosity persisted. I caught myself tracing my lips, fascinated by their new fullness, the slight pink hue that hadn't been there before. I ran a finger along the curve of my cheekbone, down my neck, marveling at the softness, the subtle warmth. There was a thrill in discovering myself in ways I had never allowed before, a secret world hidden just beneath my skin. By late afternoon, I realized I couldn't avoid the inevitable. I had to face the world, or at least the hallway outside my apartment. Heart pounding, I slowly opened the door, and the hallway light hit me. I caught my reflection in the polished brass numbers outside my door. I barely recognized the person staring back. My chest tightened, but then, an odd sensation, like a spark of power. I practiced walking, testing the sway of my hips, the lightness of my steps. It felt unnatural at first, but as minutes passed, the movements became my own, tentative but confident in small bursts. I whispered to myself, "You can do this. You have to." The elevator ride to the lobby was torture. Each mirrored panel reflected my new form, forcing me to confront the truth I couldn't deny. I barely recognized myself, and yet I was mesmerized. I caught a glimpse of my legs, slimmer, more graceful, and my heart skipped. I realized I wasn't just looking different, I was embodying something entirely new, a version of myself I hadn't known existed. By the time I reached the lobby, the initial panic had shifted into something else, a tense excitement, a dangerous curiosity. People moved past me, some glancing up, others barely noticing, but I felt every eye like a jolt. My reflection in the glass doors mocked me, daring me to step forward. And I did. I had walked into the first layer of this strange, secret world, and I knew, deep in my bones, that nothing would ever be the same. The rest of that day was a blur of whispered thoughts, cautious experiments. I tested my voice, touched my face, marveled at the sway in my step. I talked to my cat, laughed nervously, even cried a little, but beneath it all, I felt a stirring of empowerment I hadn't anticipated. For the first time, I glimpsed a world beyond the ordinary, a hidden spectrum of identity and possibility. Night fell, and I stood in front of the mirror one last time, running my hands down the curves of my body, the contours of my face. I whispered to myself, I don't know who I am yet, but I'm going to find out. And with that, the first tremors of fear gave way to a pulse of determination. I had stepped into a world of secrets. A world that was mine to explore. And I would. The next morning, I woke up with the lingering echo of yesterday's shock still clinging to me like a second skin. The sunlight spilling through my blinds didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt accusatory, as if the world itself was watching me, waiting for me to slip. I stared at my reflection, tracing every new contour, every subtle change, trying to memorize what had become my face. Coffee in hand, I rehearsed the day ahead. The office. Friends. Family. Each scenario twisted my stomach into knots. I had to step outside, but even the thought made me hyper-aware of every movement, every sway, every inch of my body that had been rewritten overnight. The elevator ride downstairs was worse than I imagined. Each mirrored panel reflected a stranger, graceful, delicate, and undeniably feminine. My heart thumped violently as I realized everyone else would be seeing this version of me today. Panic bubbled, sharp and bitter, but I forced myself to inhale slowly, steadying my voice as I muttered under my breath, "You can do this. You have to." The streets were no reprieve. People moved past me in streams of oblivious motion, yet I felt their presence like electric currents, every glance a jolt. Some paused for a fraction longer, their eyes flicking with curiosity or uncertainty. I kept my head down at first, shuffling, hesitant, feeling the soft sway of my hips with each step, a rhythm I had never known but was quickly becoming familiar with. By the time I reached my office building, sweat clung to my hairline. I paused at the lobby mirror, taking a deep breath, convincing myself that no one could possibly notice the difference, yet the reflection stared back, undeniable and new. I adjusted my blouse, a light, flowing fabric I had hastily picked the night before, and tucked my hair behind my ears. Inside the elevator, a colleague from the floor above stepped in. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, voice hesitant. Her brow furrowed as if sensing a subtle difference in my aura. I forced a casual laugh. "Yeah, just tired," I muttered. My voice, melodic yet still unfamiliar, wavered slightly. She nodded, unconvinced, and stepped aside. The office itself became a minefield. I avoided the main seating area, taking a corner cubicle to minimize exposure. Every conversation felt perilous. "You seem different today," another colleague said, leaning over the partition. I blinked, panic flaring, and forced a smile. "Just trying something new," I said, heart racing. Lunch hour was worse. I ducked into a quiet corner of the cafeteria, hoping to remain invisible. The reflection in my phone's tabletop screen reminded me constantly that I wasn't just hiding from others, I was hiding from myself. Each glance at the mirror-like surface of the table made my stomach churn. My hands were slimmer, my nails perfectly manicured without effort. Every detail screamed unfamiliarity. Friends didn't help. My best friend, Julia, leaned across the table, her eyes wide. You look different. Really different," she said, voice a mixture of concern and curiosity. I laughed nervously, brushing a lock of hair behind my ear. "Tired, I guess," I muttered. But the lie felt hollow, and I could see her skepticism. The office gossip didn't help either. Whispers floated past, soft but sharp. Is that him? I don't know. Each snippet of conversation felt like a dagger. I retreated further into my cubicle, wishing I could disappear entirely. Even simple tasks became exercises in anxiety. Typing emails, answering calls, attending meetings, every movement, every word, felt exposed. I caught myself adjusting my posture repeatedly, testing the sway of my hips, the curve of my back, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. My reflection in the glass doors and windows mocked me with every subtle sway, reminding me that I was no longer the person I had been yesterday. By mid-afternoon, the internal pressure had escalated. I slipped into the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror, whispering, "Who are you? Who have you become?" I touched my face, traced my jawline, ran a hand through my hair. It was mesmerizing, terrifying, intoxicating. I felt both vulnerable and powerful, an odd duality that made my chest tighten. Work wasn't the only arena of disruption. Family interactions were another battlefield. That evening, I had dinner with my parents. Their eyes flicked over me, hesitant, searching for familiar cues. "You look, well," my mom said cautiously. My dad grunted, trying to hide his confusion. The conversation was stilted, every sentence weighted with unspoken questions. I laughed nervously, poured water into my glass, and nodded. But inside, I was crumbling, every glance and gesture a reminder of the impossible secret I now carried. Phone notifications didn't ease the pressure either. Friends messaging to meet, plans I could no longer commit to without revealing my transformation. Every ping was a reminder of how precariously my life was balanced. I felt trapped in a delicate act, performing old roles while inhabiting a new identity. Even the simplest social interactions became trials of endurance. Walking past strangers in the streets, grocery shopping, taking public transport, I felt every eye upon me. Some glances lingered, curious or admiring, while others were cold, judgmental. Each moment sharpened my awareness, forcing me to confront the duality of my existence, the familiar world of yesterday and the alien, mesmerizing world that now lived in my reflection. By nightfall, exhaustion settled deep in my bones. I returned home, trembling slightly, heart still racing from the day's encounters. Sitting in front of the mirror once more, I ran my hands along my arms, legs, and face, marveling at the new softness of my skin, the fluidity of my movements, the subtle power in my gaze. This body, this identity, was both a prison and a liberation. I realized then that the disruption wasn't temporary, it was permanent. I had entered a life where normal routines were no longer simple, where each interaction carried weight, where every glance, every gesture could expose me. Fear and curiosity, embarrassment and exhilaration, they intertwined into a tangled, vivid tapestry that defined my new existence. And yet, despite the tension, despite the anxiety, a small thrill stirred deep within me. For the first time, I glimpsed what life could be like when seen fully, truly, without pretense. I had stepped into a world that challenged every notion I had held about identity, about control, about self. And even though I didn't yet understand it, I knew one thing: I couldn't go back. I was living in a world of secrets now. A world where every day would test my courage, my patience, and my ability to navigate a life I had never imagined. And in that challenge, amidst the fear and the curiosity, I felt the faintest spark of empowerment, a seed of the person I could become. Home had never felt so simultaneously safe and electric. The door clicked behind me, sealing the outside world out, and I exhaled a breath I didn't even know I was holding. Finally, I could explore this new version of myself without the scrutinizing eyes of coworkers, friends, or family. Alone, in my sanctuary, I could unravel the mysteries that had turned my life upside down. I started tentatively, with the clothes. My closet, once a collection of nondescript t-shirts and jeans, now felt like a treasure trove. I ran my fingers along fabrics I had barely noticed before: soft blouses, flowing skirts, dresses with lace trims. My heart thumped as I picked out a pale pink blouse, the fabric light and silky under my fingertips. When I slipped it on, the mirror reflected something startling. Not just my altered body, but a presence, a persona emerging that I had never allowed myself to embody before. The first experiment with makeup was clumsy. My hands shook as I picked up a tube of lipstick, swiping it across my lips with too much pressure. The color was bold, daring, a sharp contrast to the paleness of my skin. I stumbled over the eyeliner, creating uneven lines that made me laugh nervously. But with each brushstroke, each careful motion, I felt something ignite inside me. Every mistake was a lesson, every small improvement a triumph. By the end of the evening, I looked into the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. She was confident, daring, playful, yet unmistakably me. Next came my hair. Long and soft, now brushing past my shoulders, it had a weight I had never felt before. I experimented with styles, loose waves, half-tied braids, even a sleek ponytail. Each style revealed a different facet of my identity. I laughed at myself, twirling in front of the mirror, enjoying the sound of my high, melodic voice as it echoed through the apartment. Then came the exploration of movement and posture. I practiced walking with deliberate grace, testing the sway of my hips, the subtle tilt of my shoulders. Each step was a discovery, a negotiation between old habits and this emerging self. I laughed at the sound of my own heels clicking on the hardwood floors, a sound that felt powerful, daring, and yes, entirely seductive. It was strange, intoxicating, and freeing all at once. I began keeping a journal, chronicling the tiniest observations, how my skin felt against different fabrics, how my voice shifted when I lowered it or elongated vowels, how my reflection seemed to change with the light, the angle, even my mood. Each entry was an intimate conversation with myself, a map of the new territory I was learning to navigate. Some nights, curiosity turned into experimentation. I applied makeup in increasingly complex patterns, contouring my face to enhance the features that had emerged overnight. I practiced expressions, playful smiles, coy glances, confident gazes, and recorded short videos of myself to study the transformation. Watching the playback, I was stunned. The person on screen was beautiful, bold, undeniably magnetic. And yet, it was me. Voice work became another avenue of exploration. I practiced speaking in different tones, experimenting with pitch and inflection. I found that I could modulate my voice to sound soft and inviting, or playful and teasing. Even a casual greeting transformed into an opportunity to embody this new identity. Each utterance carried weight, power, and a thrill I had never anticipated. Private fashion shows became a ritual. I spent hours mixing and matching outfits, pairing skirts with boots, blouses with delicate accessories, scarves, and jewelry. Each combination was a step further into this secret world, a silent declaration of the person I was becoming. I twirled, posed, and even danced in front of the mirror, laughing at the joy and absurdity of it all. Sensory exploration was equally intoxicating. I noticed the brush of fabric against my skin, the subtle fragrance of my lotions and perfumes, the weight of jewelry on my wrist, the slight tension of stockings against my legs. Each sensation reinforced the reality of this transformation, grounding me in the authenticity of my new self. And then, there were the emotional discoveries. Alone, I allowed myself to feel the thrill, the embarrassment, the curiosity that had been simmering under the surface. I caught myself blushing, laughing, whispering to my reflection, sharing secrets I had never spoken aloud. It was intimate, confessional, and liberating. I realized that this world of secrets wasn't just about outward appearance, it was about reclaiming parts of myself I hadn't allowed to flourish. Late nights became the most sacred. In the quiet darkness, I could transform fully, exploring identities, expressions, and personas without fear. Each session left me more confident, more in tune with my desires, and more aware of the delicate power of authenticity. I was learning that transformation wasn't merely physical, it was emotional, psychological, and profoundly intimate. Sometimes, I caught glimpses of fear creeping back in, the worry of discovery, the anxiety of exposure, but I learned to balance it with exhilaration. Each risk taken in the privacy of my home was a rehearsal for the real world, a way to test boundaries, to stretch comfort zones, and to embrace vulnerability as strength. I experimented with small gestures, subtle touches, movements that felt feminine, graceful, yet entirely natural. I practiced glances in reflective surfaces, adjusting angles, tilting my head, perfecting smiles. Each practice, each discovery, was a revelation. I began to understand the interplay between appearance and presence, the silent language of posture, gesture, and expression. Through this secret exploration, I discovered resilience. I realized that identity wasn't static, it was fluid, evolving, and ultimately mine to define. I could blend fear with curiosity, hesitation with daring, uncertainty with confidence. Each night, as I stood before the mirror, I felt a shift. The protagonist staring back was no longer merely reacting to change, she was embracing it, shaping it, owning it. The most profound discovery came when I allowed myself to linger in moments of pure self-expression. Spinning in skirts, applying makeup with abandon, laughing at the reflection of a new persona, it wasn't just about transformation. It was about joy, liberation, and the quiet thrill of being truly seen, even if only by myself. By the end of the week, I noticed subtle shifts in my confidence. Even in private, I carried myself differently. Movements were deliberate, expressions more assured. I found myself anticipating interactions, imagining the ways I might be perceived, and preparing with a growing sense of pride. I realized that the world of secrets I had entered wasn't a trap, it was a playground, a laboratory for self-discovery, a path toward authenticity. In the mirror, I whispered softly, almost reverently, I am more than I knew I could be. And for the first time, I truly believed it. The weekend arrived, and with it, a mixture of excitement and dread I hadn't anticipated. 4 days, I had rehearsed every movement, every gesture, every syllable of my voice in private. But now, stepping into the outside world fully transformed, I faced the ultimate test. Could I maintain this new identity in public without faltering? The event was casual, a friends' gathering, small, cozy, nothing extravagant. And yet, my nerves coiled in my stomach like a live thing. Every glance, every conversation, carried the potential for revelation, for exposure, for humiliation. I smoothed my blouse, tugged slightly at my skirt, and took a deep breath. My reflection in the mirror, now fully familiar and yet still mesmerizing, nodded back at me, you can do this. I stepped outside, feeling the weight of the world shift. The air was crisp, the light soft and forgiving. Each step I took was deliberate, a test of balance between fear and confidence. People passed by, some glancing, some ignoring, but I felt every presence like a current running through me. The sway of my hips, the subtle tilt of my shoulders, the cadence of my voice when I muttered greetings, all of it was new and entirely thrilling. At the gathering, the moment of confrontation came sooner than expected. One of my colleagues, someone I had not anticipated seeing here, looked at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Is that really you?" she asked, voice trembling with shock. Time slowed. The laughter, the chatter, the soft clinking of glasses faded into silence. All eyes turned toward me. My heart hammered. Panic surged, sharp and sudden, but beneath it, a deeper, steadier current began to rise, confidence. I had practiced, experimented, and explored this new self. I had faced mirrors, solitude, private revelations. And now, standing here, fully visible, I realized something crucial. I was ready. "Yes," I said, voice steady, melodic, unapologetic. "It's me. And yes, I'm different. And I like it." The words left my lips with a power I hadn't known I possessed. The silence lingered for a heartbeat, then shifted. Eyes that had widened in shock softened into curiosity. A smile formed on my colleague's lips, tentative at first, then more assured. "Wow, you look incredible," she said, voice filled with awe. The tension in the room dissolved gradually, replaced by admiration, interest, and connection. I laughed lightly, the sound rich and playful, feeling the energy of acceptance envelop me. Every step I took, every gesture I made, was deliberate yet effortless. I was performing no longer, I was being. Over the next hours, I mingled with friends, colleagues, and strangers alike. Conversations flowed, laughter echoed, and the once terrifying awareness of every gaze transformed into a quiet, intoxicating thrill. I realized that my fear had been a necessary shadow, highlighting the empowerment I now felt. I was fully present, fully authentic, and fully alive. Even small gestures carried weight. The tilt of my head during conversation, the flick of a hand as I gestured, the subtle sparkle of my eyes in soft lighting, all of it radiated confidence and authenticity. I noticed how people responded, how their expressions softened, how curiosity replaced judgment. Each interaction reinforced the truth I had discovered alone in my apartment. The world of secrets was not a prison, it was a stage for courage and self-expression. Then came the pivotal moment, the one that would define this journey. My closest friend, Julia, leaned close, her voice gentle but insistent. "You've changed. I mean, really. But it's like you're glowing. This version of you, it's amazing." I felt a lump rise in my throat, a mixture of relief, pride, and vulnerability. I had to discover it, I whispered, almost to myself. I had to see what was inside me. And I like who I've become. The night deepened, the air cool and fragrant, the soft hum of music in the background. I found myself stepping outside onto a quiet balcony, watching the city lights flicker. I touched my face, tracing the contours I had come to love, feeling the thrill of ownership and self-acceptance. The person in the mirror was not a stranger anymore, she was me, fully, unapologetically, and beautifully alive. I realized then that empowerment wasn't about hiding, nor was it about perfection. It was about embracing the vulnerability, the fear, the curiosity, and transforming it into courage. It was about walking into a world that had once terrified me and claiming my space with grace, confidence, and authenticity. By the end of the evening, I felt a shift so profound it left me breathless. I had confronted exposure, had faced judgment and whispers, and had emerged unbroken, radiant, and confident. The world of secrets I had feared was now a world of possibilities, a playground for growth, self-expression, and liberation. Walking home under the soft glow of streetlights, I allowed myself to reflect on the journey. Every hesitation, every trembling glance in mirrors, every whispered confession to myself had led here. I had transformed not just in body, but in spirit. I had learned that identity was not static, that fear could coexist with exhilaration, and that authenticity was the most powerful form of courage. The night was quiet, but my mind buzzed with awareness. I was aware of my body, my presence, my voice, and the way I moved through the world. I felt the subtle power of recognition, not from others, but from myself. The reflection in the window smiled back, familiar and strange at the same time. "I am me," I whispered, a statement of fact and triumph. "And I'm proud of her." By embracing the transformation, by stepping fully into this secret world, I had discovered freedom. And in that freedom, I had discovered joy, confidence, and the exhilarating truth that authenticity, however shocking or unexpected, is a gift worth claiming. I had walked into a world of secrets, and in doing so, I had found myself. Fully, unapologetically, and gloriously alive. The morning after the gathering, I woke up to a world that felt familiar and yet astonishingly new. The sunlight streamed in through the blinds, softer now, gentler, almost as if the universe itself was nodding in approval. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers brushing over my face, tracing the curves and contours I had come to know intimately. There was no shock anymore, no panic. Only recognition, and an almost reverent sense of belonging within myself. I realized that the journey had been more than a transformation of appearance. It had been a journey into identity, vulnerability, courage, and self-discovery. Every anxious glance in the mirror, every whispered word to my reflection, every private experiment with makeup, clothing, and posture had taught me something profound. Authenticity is its own power. I thought back to the first moments of shock, the panic, the disbelief. How strange it had felt to see a reflection that was at once familiar and entirely new. How terrifying it had been to walk into public spaces, fearing judgment or rejection. And yet, those fears had been necessary. They had guided me, sharpened me, and ultimately led me to this point of self-acceptance. As I prepared for the day, I moved through my apartment with a quiet confidence. Each outfit I chose, each brushstroke of makeup, each gesture of my new self, felt deliberate and powerful. No longer experiments or rehearsals, they were expressions of who I truly was. I glanced in the mirror, smiling at the reflection that looked back, graceful, vibrant, and undeniably me. Even small interactions carried weight now. On the street, strangers' glances no longer felt like judgment. They were neutral, passing, or sometimes appreciative. At work, I moved through conversations with ease, a subtle confidence in my posture and voice, a quiet assurance that had been absent before. I felt empowered not because others accepted me, but because I had accepted myself. The real lesson, I realized, was the freedom of choice. I had chosen to step into this world of secrets, to explore, to experiment, to challenge myself. And in choosing, I had discovered something invaluable: the ability to embrace change, to navigate fear, and to find joy in authenticity. Sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, I reflected on the people who had supported me, even unknowingly, the friends who noticed, the strangers who glanced with curiosity, and the quiet presence of my own courage. Each had contributed to the tapestry of this transformation, reminding me that life, no matter how disorienting, offers moments of beauty and empowerment when we dare to embrace them. I whispered to my reflection, a soft, tender affirmation: I am me. I am proud of her. I am free. The words resonated, echoing in the quiet apartment, grounding me in the truth that I had uncovered. The person I had become was not a replacement or a loss, but an evolution, a fuller, richer expression of self. In that moment, I understood that the world of secrets I had feared was not a prison, it was a gateway. A gateway to courage, joy, authenticity, and self-love. I had walked into it trembling, uncertain, and apprehensive. I emerged confident, radiant, and fully alive. And as I looked out at the city, sunlight glinting off the buildings, the soft hum of life in the streets, I smiled. The world was vast, unpredictable, and full of surprises, and now, I was ready to meet it fully as myself, unapologetically and beautifully. The journey wasn't over. There would be challenges, whispers, and moments of doubt. But I had learned the most important truth: identity is fluid, courage is earned through vulnerability, and authenticity is the most powerful gift of all. I stepped away from the mirror, heart light, spine straight, and shoulders lifted. Today, I would face the world not with fear, but with curiosity, excitement, and pride. For I had walked into a world of secrets, and in doing so, I had found the most extraordinary secret of all: myself.